Can you guys hear me? All right. Okay, folks, let's get started. What is the catalog? The catalog is everywhere. It is all around us, even now in this very room. You can see it when you look out the window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is, okay, I was just messing around. Catalog is not quite the Matrix. It is not nearly as cool. Baldy is right. Okay. But there are similarities between the catalog and the Matrix. So for today's presentation, we are going to use the Matrix as a metaphor for the catalog. And I can see Dilip over there already shaking his head. Oh my God, please, no, not another metaphor. Sorry, it's not entirely my fault, man. The catalog is not the most exciting subject on the planet. Terribly important for sure, but it's not the coolest kid on the block. So I have to figure out some way to keep you guys engaged. This is what I had to come up with, and I hope all of you have seen the movie. All right. So we're going to do a little bit of a role playing here. For the next 30 or 40 minutes, you will be Neo. You are the chosen one. And the catalog is going to be this elusive, mysterious matrix. You always knew it was there. You always felt its presence, but you couldn't quite understand what it was, or you needed some help demystifying it. That's where I come in. That picture was from last year. So who can tell me what goes in the fourth box, the last quadrant? What can Morpheus offer Neo to help him get into the matrix? Sorry? API. Cool. The equivalent in the matrix. But since you got the API, that's the right answer. Dilip, do we have any more t-shirts? Maybe not. We'll name the variable, we'll name one of the variables in the code for you. All right. So that's what we're going to talk about today. APIs for catalogs. I'll help you understand the catalog through the APIs. My name is Bala Parthasarathy. I'm one of the product managers in the catalog team at eBay. And before we move on, I'd like to share a little bit of trivia about my name to help you remember it. A few years ago, I was in South America in Peru, and I was with a group of Spanish-speaking folks. And as soon as I told them my name was Bala, they all burst up laughing. And they started shooting at each other with their fingers. And I was just staring at them like a llama. What the hell is going on here, right? It turns out that Bala in Spanish means bullet. So they gave me the moniker Senor Bala for the rest of the trip, and it stuck around. So that also happens to be my eBay user ID. It is also my Twitter handle. And although I haven't tweeted even once, I already have 1 million Latino followers. Right? True story. Okay. What is the catalog then in the real world? A catalog is nothing but an extensive library of product information that you can readily use for buying and selling items on the eBay marketplace. And we have information on millions of products across several categories on eBay. And when I say we have information about products, you may be wondering what kind of information? What exactly do I get? What kind of information do you have in the catalog? To begin with, you have high-quality product titles and stock photos. And you get professionally written product descriptions. You get accurate and detailed product specifications. And you get price and performance trends on products. You also have reviews, ratings, and product guides. And you also get a lot of merchandising information. It enables you to do things like people who looked at product A ended up buying product B and things like that. And all this is readily available on your fingertips. Before we do a deep dive into the catalog, it's very important to understand the nuance between these two key concepts of product versus an item. I can tell you that even among my colleagues, not everybody knows this difference. It seems simple enough. So it's best to explain with an example. The difference is between the iPhone and my iPhone, which I flushed down the toilet. Right? So the iPhone, everybody, and even the system, knows certain facts about the iPhone. We know that brand is Apple, it works with certain carriers, Verizon, AT&T, whatever, and it has certain description and stock photo and so on. On the other hand, a listing refers to that product. I may be selling an iPhone, which is an instance of that product. My iPhone will have a reference to that product ID, plus all other information I need when I have to sell my iPhone on a particular marketplace. I have to give the product reference ID, plus I have to specify my condition, the item condition, and I may also offer any custom item photos and other details that you may need to know. And I also need to supply all other information needed to complete my transaction, things like my return policy or payment information or shipping and so on and so forth. And as a lot of you probably are developers, you may think of a product as a class in object-oriented programming, and an item is almost like an instance of that class or an object. And finally, products live in a catalog, and items or listings live in a marketplace or a storefront. Catalogs are beneficial to both buyers and sellers. On the sell side, sellers simply become more efficient by using catalogs. Since you have so much product information readily to begin with, you don't have to start from the scratch. A lot of the product information can be readily pre-filled onto your item, so your efficiency goes up. You can quickly create listings of very high quality. And you also get additional search exposure when you list against products, not only on the eBay marketplace, but also on external search engines like Google. And of course, you have access to all the market intelligence data like average prices and trends and performance and so on. On the buy side, it simply enables comparison shopping. Comparison shopping becomes a breeze with the help of catalogs. Buyers can truly focus on the value offered by each seller on a particular product, as opposed to who has a prettier font on their description. They can easily compare items based on the factors that are really important to them, such as price or seller's reputation and so on and so forth. And of course, you can do a lot of your research with the help of products. On the product page, you have access to all the product guides and trends, pricing, and everything else, and where are the local inventory available and whatnot. So now that we know what kind of information we have in the catalog, you may be wondering, how do I get it? Fine, it's great. You have millions of products everywhere. How do I get access to that? But given that you are Neo, Mr. Spoiled Brat, you probably expect something like this. As soon as you ask for it, you want everything at your fingertips. It is almost as easy as that. We have an API called the Find Product Service. It comes under the family of APIs called Shopping API. And in its most basic form, it is just as simple. You simply pass in some search criteria like a keyword, and in the response, you will get all the products from our catalog that match your search criteria. Let's take an example. Here in this case, I'm searching for Harry Potter. So I just want all products that match my input keyword, Harry Potter. I may be getting a response like this. I'll get an array of products that match my criteria from the catalog. And about each product that's returned in the result, I may get some product information such as title, or what is its reference ID, or what are its properties, or stock photo, and so on and so forth. Find Products is the most basic API and one of the most popular ones people use to find what kind of products we have in the catalog and to fetch basic information about each product. We also have plenty of other finding APIs specific to catalogs, which allow you to build richer, more sophisticated search functionalities on your own applications. We have a whole bunch of APIs beginning with the prefix getProduct under the Trading API family that allow you to drill down and fetch additional product details about whatever products we have in the catalog, as well as APIs that allow you to build sophisticated search experiences to your customers. So while the product search APIs allow you to get the structured product information that we have in the catalog, we also have some metadata APIs that help you understand how that information is structured in the catalog. For example, the getProduct search names gives you all the properties by which you can search the catalog for products. For example, it will tell you in the books catalog, you can search by author, as opposed to in the automobile tires catalog, you can search by diameter or speed rating. And similarly, on TVs or whatever, you can search by screen size, resolution, and so on. So this tells you which key aspects are important in the context of search in specific domains or categories. And we also have some other metadata APIs. Product search values tells you what are the common values you can use to search. For example, I can say, give me all GPS products matching brand equals Garmin. So Garmin is a possible value that this API will tell you. And just like with any other metadata, it tends to get cached on the application side with a lot of your applications. And they are also subject to changes on the system side. So we also have the metadata search versions exposed via the API, which help you keep your applications in sync with our changing metadata. And we have a few more metadata APIs. We'll talk about some of them later in today's presentation. So now that you know what information is there and how to access it and how to interpret it with the help of the metadata, you may be wondering, how do I actually use all this great information? You have these millions of products. How do I associate my listings to these products? Here's a sample screenshot showing showing the product-based experience on our sell your item flow on the eBay.com website. It's very straightforward. As a seller, you would search for whether the product exists in the catalog. And if you find your product, you just click on the button that says sell one of those. And everything about the product that we have in the catalog gets pre-filled onto your item. For example, all the ones that are circled in red, things like your title, your product description, your stock photo URLs, and some of the key properties such as brand and model and carrier and whatever other information we have in the catalog. So as a seller, I don't have to start from the scratch. I just have to fill in those additional information which is required to provide my buyer whatever else he needs to know to buy my item. The same exact thing can be done via the API. As some of you may be aware, the equivalent of selling an item via the API is using the add item API, which comes under the trading API family. And in the add item API, if you want to associate a product with your listing, you simply have to specify a product identifier. You may choose to use one of many possible product identifiers. The most basic and the most unambiguous way to uniquely identify a product is by using eBay's product identifier, also known as EPID, stands for eBay Product ID. It is equivalent to the Amazon Serial ID number or ASIN on Amazon. However, at eBay, we don't think it's a sin to list with products. Or if you don't have an eBay product identifier, you can also use a global product ID, such as a UPC or an ISBN, depending on the category. And sometimes you may also use brand and part number. The combination of brand and part number also works as a global ID for a product, also known as MPN. So you can use any one of these unique identifiers to reference a product when you call add item. And if we can look up a product from our catalog for this ID, then your item will be automatically associated with the product, as well as all the product information gets pre-filled onto your item. Here's a sample. The important section to know here is the highlighted one. There is a small section called product listing details, within which you will include the product ID. In this case, I've specified an external global product identifier, a UPC. And when I do this, automatically the product that is in the catalog with this UPC gets associated with my item. And you may also see a few other input parameters specified inside the product listing details. Of course, you can visit the documentation to learn about all of them, but I'd like to highlight some of the key input parameters you can use. Just because you list against a product does not mean that you have no control over what part of the product information or how much of it gets painted onto your item. The first one, there is a flag called use first product. Sometimes when you specify an external ID such as UPC, it may not always uniquely resolve to one product from our catalog. This is a problem in the real world as well. Manufacturers sometimes assign the same UPC to, maybe they package it differently. Maybe one box is white and another is white, and you may have the same UPC, and you may have two different products. And in those cases, when you pass this flag as true, the system will automatically take the first matching product and list it against it. If you don't specify, the default is false, and you may get blocked, and the system will ask you to choose one explicitly. You can use this to automatically let the system pick one for you. And sometimes your item may be so different so much customized or so used and worn out that the stock photo of the brand new product does not accurately describe your item, and it may even mislead the buyer and set the wrong expectations. So in those cases, you may want to choose not to include the stock photo onto your item. So you can use the second flag here, include stock photo URL, and set it to false, and you'll be expected to provide your own custom photos in those cases. And the last one, include pre-filled item information, also lets you control what part of other product properties, name value pairs, get copied onto your item. You can set it as false, and you can provide your own custom name value pairs. And even though you provided your own values, you still get the benefit of the catalog exposure by being associated with the product. Some of the best practices when listing with products using the Add Item API, always provide the EPID whenever you have it. Like I said before, EPID is the most unambiguous way to uniquely identify a product in our catalog. So whenever you have an EPID, it's always a good idea to use the EPID as the #1 preference. You're also recommended to pass in a GUID or a global unique ID for a product such as a UPC or ISBN, even if you have the EPID. Or sometimes even if the category is not even catalog enabled, it's always a good idea to pass in the global ID because you get more search exposure. The entire industry is moving towards placing more focus on products and unique identifiers. So it's not only going to give you additional exposure on the eBay marketplace, but also on external search engines like Google. So it's always a good idea to pass in the global ID if you have it. I'm sorry? No, not a random unique ID. Sorry.
Where I can get a GUID is given by my own, or I can get somewhere?
So it cannot be a random ID. This is a real world UPC or an ISBN, whatever is the global ID for your product.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, the system will try to validate whatever ID you pass in. It has to be a real ID. It is just an alias you can use to reference the product. And when you list with products, we automatically can derive the category where your item must belong to. So as a result, it leads to a confusing user experience when you list in 2 categories explicitly. So not only it's confusing to the seller, the system also does not perform to its optimal state. And finally, we have started mandating the use of catalog in some categories. So in those categories where it's mandatory to use catalogs, you will not be allowed to list unless you associate a product to your item. So at this point, you may be wondering, okay, what if you don't have my product in your catalog? Am I completely blocked? So that brings us to the next section, adding products. You guys remember? Sure. And then which ones are going to be added on? Sure. I think the question is, how do I know which categories mandate the use of catalogs, and how do I know which categories support that functionality, right? Yeah.
I guess that's in category features.
Correct.
That tells it. But how quickly is eBay going to begin to require that for more catalogs?
So at this point,
before the end of the year, or not till Q1 or
so
Q2?
Definitely not before the end of the year.
Okay.
And at this point, I think there's only one category that's mandated. I think it is GPS systems in the US and UK sites. And as far as I know, I don't think any more categories are going to be mandated for this year. Okay. And I'll probably be addressing some of these questions later in the slides. So I will have some time for Q&A towards the end. So if I don't cover some of your concerns, please feel free to ask me at the end. Who remembers who she is, the lady in the red dress? What does she represent in the movie? Anybody? She represents the fact that you can have whatever you want in the matrix. The same way, you can have any product you want in the catalog now. This is a brand new functionality we have launched this year. We now allow community members to add products in our catalog. It is currently enabled only in some categories, but we plan to expand it to more categories pretty soon. We offer 3 ways to add a product to the catalog. So the most basic way and the simplest way is to use eBay's web interface for product creation. It's also known as the add product flow. It's a very simple web form. You just go and say, add this product and fill it up. You provide your product properties and whatever, and you can say, you can request a product to be added to the catalog. Or you can use a tool called File Exchange, which allows sellers to upload a product feed and upload products in bulk. You can just upload a file with maybe 2,000 product records and request all of them to be added in bulk in one shot. And of course, we also have a service, an API for product creation. So there's a new API called Add Product, which you can integrate with if you want to enable this functionality in your own applications. And of course, you can always redirect your users to one of eBay's own tools for product creation until you are fully integrated with the API. Here's how the web add product flow looks like on eBay. I begin by searching for whether the product actually exists in the catalog. I search for whatever I want. And if I don't find it, I click on a button that says add it now to the catalog, and it brings up a page like this. This is a small snippet of the page. You just get a simple page with a bunch of fields that the seller is expected to provide. And once you fill it in, and you just click on a button that says add it to the catalog, and your product will be added instantaneously in real time. And you will get the product identifier for the product newly created for you. The same exact thing can be done via the API. It is a simple two-step process. In step one, you query the catalog to get the metadata you need about the category in which you want to add the product. So you need to know what information should I collect from my customer to create a product in a particular category. And in the second step, you simply submit that request. You call add product and say request it. So let's take a sample here. But before that, some of you who are familiar with adding items using the add item API may realize that this is very, very similar to how you call add item on the eBay marketplace. Just like before calling add item, you call a bunch of item level metadata APIs. You may be calling get category features or get item recommendations and so on and so forth. The equivalent of that is this product metadata API call, which allows you to find what information you need before you can call add product. Here's a sample request for how to fetch the metadata for a category. All I have to do is pass in the site ID and the category ID, and you can chain multiple categories in one request, hence the suffix bulk in the name of the service. And in this case, this category ID happens to be for GPS systems, and a response might look something like this. You get a whole bunch of properties that you want. So these are the fields you will paint on that page that you saw. What kind of information that the seller must provide to create a product in a category. You may get a whole bunch of properties, for example, brand, manufacturer, UPC, color, size, capacity, whatever. And about each one of those properties, you will get metadata. For example, in this case, you get a property called brand, and it tells you that the data type of this field is string as opposed to numeric. And it also shows you some of the recommended values for it. So Garmin, TomTom, and all the manufacturers who make GPS systems. And it also tells you information such as what is the max character length allowed for this property, and whether it's multi-valued, whether it's required. All those things you need to know to paint a page like that. And once you get that, here's a sample add product input request. This is after your customer has provided all the information. This is how you submit the data to the catalog system to add a product. Here you simply say, okay, I want you to add a product in this category with title equals XYZ, and description equals this, with this particular stock photo, with brand as Garmin, blah, 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 right? And immediately the system will process the request, and you will get a response immediately in real time. This is a synchronous call. And here's a sample response when a request successfully results in a new product being added to our catalog. In this case, I get a status code as success, and I get the eBay product ID for the newly created product. Some of the recommendations, some recommendations for what you need to know when you use the API to create products. As I mentioned, catalog is now mandatory in some categories. So in those categories, if you don't already find what you are looking for in the catalog, you are expected to first add it to the catalog, get the product ID, and then associate it with your listing to get unblocked. And we talked about the difference between products and items. It's very important to understand this difference so that you don't include item-specific information when you create a product. Don't put things like item condition or your feedback or your business information when you create the product. All those should belong in the listing. And as with any other content on the site, use of profanity or malicious information is prohibited. I will have some time for Q&A at the end, but here are some of the most popular questions we receive about this feature. The first is, as somebody already asked, how do I know which categories and sites support this functionality? How do I know which category I can create a product in, and which category am I mandated to list with products? So both that information you can query using the Get Category Features API, which comes under the Trading API family. And the second question is a lot more popular and something that we almost immediately receive as soon as we pitch this new functionality. The first question is, are seller-created products public? Once a particular seller creates a product in the eBay catalog, is it treated any differently from all other products in your catalog? Can other sellers see it? Can other sellers list against it? Can they submit corrections against it if they see something wrong? So the answer is yes to all the above. That's the simple answer. Of course, we allow everybody to submit a request to correct a particular product, or you can always list against a product. But we have a lot of safety nets and rules and policies in place to prevent gaming and illegal use of these functionalities. So far, I have talked about APIs for searching the catalog, interpreting the data in the catalog, understanding the metadata in the catalog, how do you list with catalogs, and how do you add your own products to the catalog. These are some of the major functionalities we expose via the APIs. We have plenty more APIs that allow you to dig deeper into the catalog and work with it. Please visit our website and check out the documentation at x.com to learn more. And most of these functionalities are also available in our sandbox environment. Some of you who attended Rekha's and Dilip's presentations yesterday might know that we have a sophisticated sandbox environment, and most of the APIs we have in production are also supported in the sandbox environment. So feel free to roll up your sleeves and play with the APIs in the sandbox. A little bit of a glimpse into what we are currently working on in the catalog team. Firstly, we are constantly improving both the coverage and the quality of the products we have in the catalog. And we plan to enable product creation in more and more categories in the near future. And we are constantly improving the algorithms we use for finding products and updating them. And of course, some of you who are familiar with our APIs so far might have sensed a bit of redundancy between APIs. There are seemingly similar functionality offered by different APIs. We are aware of that, and we are working towards consolidating them, and a whole bunch of other changes. So to summarize, what are the key takeaways from today's presentation? First, eBay offers a rich catalog with millions of products across several categories. We have information on millions and millions of products. And catalogs are good for both buyers and sellers, and therefore to you developers as well. And starting this year, we now allow the eBay community to add products into our catalog. And you can enrich your own applications by plugging it into the catalog and powering it with the catalog. I don't know how that got there. So that concludes my presentation. And just like Morpheus did in the Matrix, I have shown you the door to the world of catalogs. I have given you the red pill, the API, that helps you get into the catalog and work with it. Now it is your turn to walk through that door. I'd like to thank all of you for being here today, and I'd especially like to thank those who stayed awake. So with that, I'd like to take some questions now. Sure. Do we have a mic?
All right, with add item, I know that if a product is not, product suggestions get returned as a part of add item. I'm trying to understand when that's going to happen and what you're expecting for people that are listing on eBay to do with that type of data.
Sure. So when you call add item, today we already, even if your item successfully gets listed, we do return potential product matches from our catalog in the response. So you can always revise your listing and associate those product recommendations back into your item. And you can also do that when you relist your item later on. So basically the idea is that if you did not find a product by yourself, we also try to match it on your behalf when you submit your item. So at the end of the day, if you have a product and if the system finds it for you, you're recommended to associate it with your item.
What kind of constraints do you have on using the information that comes back in ways other than for listing it on eBay?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Sure. Is the information that comes back, the cataloging information that comes back, can we use it on our own sites?
Yes, so whatever information that comes out via the API is up for you for grabs. You can use that information any way you like in your own application.
Is there a notion of definition of a taxonomy to the items in the catalog going to be imposed, or not imposed, but offered? Number one, and then number two, how are you going to manage duplicate? People are kind of lazy when they search, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to get lots of duplicates, particularly
Yes.
via the API.
Very valid question. Let me answer the first question. So there is a taxonomy for sure, and I talked about the metadata APIs. So you can definitely use the metadata APIs to understand the taxonomy. It shows you how the information is structured in the catalog. For example, if you query for the GPS catalog, you might get information that tells you these are the various properties we have about each product in the GPS catalog, as opposed to books. I'm sorry?
And you're assigning, and you're creating that meta structure
Yes.
per category.
We are creating it by per category, and we also have a machine learning algorithms. So eventually it might come from the community. But yes, there is a predefined specification for each catalog.
Got it.
So that's the taxonomy, and you can query the taxonomy information by using the metadata APIs. And the second part of your question regarding duplicates, that's very important too. Just because you call add product does not mean that the system is going to trust the caller to have done the due diligence and automatically add a new product for you. We do have a dedupe step. We will try our best to find a matching product in the catalog, and only if you're sufficiently confident that the product does not exist already in the catalog, we're going to create a new one for you. So the goal is to create missing products in the catalog, not to create your own custom versions of that product. Yes, please.
Yes, I was just curious, could you describe the taxonomy and the scale of the catalog today and how you see it growing over time? You know, a little bit more specifics on the number of products, number of categories, and how that might grow.
Okay. So first of all, like I mentioned, today it's a bit tightly controlled editorially, this taxonomy that we have for catalogs. And we are currently testing the waters with a few different algorithms based on machine learning. So eventually we can take feedbacks coming in through the items from the sellers so that we don't have to editorially control them. So sellers might invariably control the taxonomy themselves. So I cannot exactly reveal what it's going to end up. Right now we are playing with a few different ways, and hopefully early next year we should be able to share that with you.
Yeah. I'm interested in how to keep quality of information, because of we can add anything
Sure.
by API, so I'm interested in.
Correct. So the question is around quality. How do you manage quality of products created by the community? We do try to validate whatever information that comes in, but it's not going to be bulletproof. So people can create products that are suboptimal and not necessarily very usable by other sellers. So those just will remain in the catalog and just not get enough traction. So maybe the only seller who will use that product is the person who created it. And as long as it conforms to the specification on that catalog, it's going to be there. It's not a problem. But if it starts getting traction, if more and more people start listing against it, if a lot of people start buying it or clicking on it, then the system will start putting more focus on it, and we will run it through additional checks and balances. Yes? Can you pass the mic here, please?
We have been developing some application to help sellers to listing items to eBay. Before the catalog, I understand that eBay got something like the eBay attribute system, right? So, for example, when I point to the memory card category, eBay will have some default fields to describe the product, like you can select the brand, the size of the memory card, or something like that. And today, eBay supports the catalog. And we found for some of the items, say the memory card as examples, we can see that eBay supports both the catalog and the attribute system before.
Correct.
So what is your comment if we should list both of informations to eBay, because we can see the significant overlap between of them.
Correct.
And sometimes it's inconsistent as well. So what is your comment? We should list both of information to eBay, or we just choose the catalog as a first choice?
Sure. Great question. So the default choice would be to use the catalog. So in most cases, the data in both the systems, the catalog system as well as the information that you query for the item level, should map. They should be pretty much the same. So in those cases, the information in the catalog should trump. So when you list against a catalog and the catalog has some color equals red, you cannot override by default. So there is some level of control that you have based on some of the flags that I showed you. But by default, whatever information is in the catalog will trump, and you are recommended to use the information that's in the catalog and only supplement it with additional properties that are not in the catalog by providing them yourself.
Will the traditional attribute system will be fade out in the future? Or?
Eventually. But for the
Eventually.
time being, we still allow sellers to supplement the data that's in the catalog by providing additional name value pairs at the item level when they call add item and list their items.
Right.
So it's going to be there, but if there are any attributes that are already in the catalog on the product that you are trying to sell, then they trump and they get painted on your item by default.
Sorry, I got one more question. In our system, because sellers will keep listing the similar item or same items to eBay, so we will use the API call to grab the catalog information and save it into our system. However, we understand that such information will sometimes got update in eBay. So will that be any push system will tell us whether this catalog has been updated? Otherwise,
Correct. So we have both a push and a pull model. So on the push side, we won't be able to notify you just because you have some product information cached on your end. We only notify those sellers who have active items associated with the particular product. So if those products undergo some changes, if we update some information on that product, then we notify those sellers saying, hey, by the way, the product has changed behind the scenes. And of course, we also version them. So when you list against an older version, you get notified in the response saying, oh, by the way, there is a newer version available, and the system has automatically picked the latest version. So you'll be notified on demand in most cases. And unless you are listing against a particular product, you won't get notification from the system.
I'd like to follow up some more on the duplicate items question, because I'm specifically interested in listing collectible books.
Okay.
And books have many different editions. Sometimes some people will call it a leather, and other people will call it, portfolio. There's lots of different ways. Sometimes an author will be Fred Allen Wolf, and sometimes Fred Wolf. And my question is, how does one go about deciding whether to, in that kind of specifically that ambiguous environment, how do you decide? How do you see if the book that you're looking for is out there? Because you don't know how many. Is there a general kind of a fuzzy search option that you can do with an API call?
It is a bit of a tricky problem. It usually, by default, we have a certain granularity in the catalog. We have already decided what are the distinguishing factors between products. For example,
and these are pre-ISBN number books.
Right. So if you have two different ISBNs, one for the signed version, another for the unsigned version, for example, then they will be physically two different products in the catalog.
No, but there's no ISBN number.
Right. So if there is no ISBN, even otherwise, so the dimensions on which we compare two products to see if they are duplicates of each other. So we may include whether it's signed or an unsigned, or whether it's hardbound or softbound, things like that. If those are parameters by which products differ, they will be added as part of whether it constitutes the identity of the product. So yeah, it will be in the metadata. It will tell you what are the factors by which products vary. Right? So you may have 100 different properties on each product, And it's not necessary that every single one of them should match for two products to be considered identical.
And so, for instance, if you have Fred Wolf and Fred Allen Wolf is the same guy, but they might be listed two different ways. How would I, as seeing if the book is listed, see if that was, or F Wolf? You know, I mean, how do you handle that? How would I handle that to try to see if, do I have to figure out every possible combination and send all of them in as a bulk listing in API?
Depending on the use case, there are a few different ways. Like you mentioned, the metadata APIs themselves give you that information. What are the dimensions on which you can figure out whether the products vary? And of course, it's not always perfect. Like you said, there are some cases where it's a little more ambiguous, and we are always trying to figure out which are those pain points, and we're trying to resolve them. But finally, if you just call it, the system will catch it and tell you that, yes, we already have this product or not. I'll be happy to talk to you offline, maybe show some examples. It's a tricky area.
There's a new flag with add item called use recommended product.
Mm-hmm.
How would somebody listing make use of that? And what effect does that have on their listing if they didn't specify any catalog information at the when they listed it?
Not too familiar with this particular area. I can, after the talk, I can help you get in touch with one of my colleagues who's an expert in that particular space. And in general, the use recommended product will automatically associate a listing to the product that the system recommends, instead of having you explicitly once again go and revise the item and associate it. It's more of a shortcut to let the system pick the most confident match and associate it automatically with your listing.
I was wondering how products can be related and how this exposed in the API. So, for example, if you have a product in different languages or the same product in different colors, or think of customizations of the product or something, is there anything the API offers?
So there are several kinds of relationships between products. One kind is that, like you mentioned, the same product in a different site, in a different language, that's one kind of relationship. Another is products that are similar, various generations of the iPod, for example. And another could be based on compatibility. You may be familiar with fitment, whether a particular product fits into another product. So at this point, as far as I'm aware, only the compatibility area, the information on whether a product is related to another based on compatibility, is exposed via the API. I'm not sure if we expose any other form of relationship at this time. And I know that we are working on it. There's a group that's focusing on that particular area, especially around the variants that you talked about. But I'm not sure if we are currently exposing them via the API at this point. Okay. Maybe one last question.
What's the process for making corrections to the catalog?
Sure. So we have the easiest way, and this is the most popular way we have, is when you go to the product page on eBay, there is a link that says, if you see any incorrect information, submit a correction request. And that's the most common way people are submitting corrections. But the add product API that we have newly launched is also going to support an operation that allow you to update an existing product. So you can specify an EPID, and you can say, here are the things I want to change on this product. And it'll follow its own process and checks and rules and policies to figure out whether that will be applied.
We seem to have two more questions.
Okay.
And that would
One of the things with Amazon's catalog, when people are adding items, we tend to see a lot of people put things as sets and then they make a product page, and they don't allow that, so they remove the listing. Will eBay allow catalog pages for groups of items or sets that a seller creates that's common?
Sure. I think the more common name it goes by is bundles, right? So you're talking about product bundles. At this point, there is no clear policy around it, but the general thinking is that there are multiple kinds of bundles. If something cannot be sold by itself, if something comes in a package only, and if the entire package, the bundle gets one UPC, for example, then that qualifies to be a product by itself in the catalog. On the other hand, if you're just trying to combine them to offer your buyer specific advantages on shipping or whatever, then you will have to pick a base product and you have to associate the other products that you're bundling with. So that will be the overall approach, but it's yet to be fully resolved how eBay will go about dealing with those kind of bundles.
So how are you going to prevent like one seller looking at it and saying, okay, my dimension is by the packages, and saying, okay, so it's like 5 inches or whatever, and then the other guy says, no, my dimension is by what the item actually is, so it's only 2 inches. How are you going to prevent like sellers going back and forth and submitting those requests and going, okay, update it to 5 inches, and the other guy coming back the next day, update it to 2 inches, update it to 5 inches, and going back and forth like that?
Right. So, like I said, the updates are subject to a much harder scrutiny. It's not going to be automatically applied. We have a lot of rules and policies in place. There's a number of factors that govern the decision behind how do we know which of the conflicting information is the right one to be applied on the product. So it's just been launched. We're testing the waters with one category, and it's a hard problem. There is no right or wrong answer in that case, so we don't know which is the right one. So if one guy says it's 5 inches, another one says 2 inches, we have, depending on how the product is performing and how popular it is, we may even manually vet it out, or we may vet it out with a third party, we may use the community, or we may decide whoever is selling more items against. So there are a number of factors that govern it. But yes, eventually it will reach a steady state. That's the idea. Okay? I'll be happy to talk with you guys after the presentation. Thank you so much.